They've done more damage in my life than any other drug.
Words could never define what that feels like. To bury your child at 17 for something that is so cheap but deadly.
Heroin users have told us that this would wreck your head. Keep taking heroin.
1 year ago, Adam Owens was found dead outside a house near Belfast where he was taking drugs. Drugs called novel psychoactive substances, or better known as legal highs. And although they were legal, they were also lethal.
When did you realize your son was taking legal highs?
I first noticed that Adam was using legal highs about 1.5 years before he would have passed away. And that I found out because I found the legal high packet in his bedroom underneath his pillow. And when I went into his room, I seen like vomit all over his bed and all over the floor, and it was black vomit. And you know, it was very, very disturbing and soul destroying, you know, because then I became aware that my child was actually using these drugs, which I hadn't a clue about.
Adele says Adam could get these substances easily because in Northern Ireland, like throughout the UK, they are legal. They're sold in head shops, on the street, but especially on internet. Today, she tries to warn young generations about these legal highs.
I actually deliberately measured out 1.5 gram of icing sugar, so that's actually icing sugar, so it's nothing sinister. And as you can see, it's actually quite a minuscule amount, really. And the reason that I did this was to highlight and point out very clearly to school children that 1.5 gram, that's the amount of legal high that my son took that night, shared with 2 other people. And that was toxic enough between 3 people to actually take my son's life at 17 years old.
These images from a surveillance camera were released by British police. Images to sound the alarm on the dangerous effects of these drugs and the number of deaths from legal highs, which went from 4 in 2009 to 115 last year. Substances which have flooded the European market and which are a growing nightmare for anti-drug authorities.
K2 Black Edition, Fury Extreme, Pink Panthers, Happy Joker Blueberry, MXC. These are all legal highs, but we don't know what's inside of them, and especially, they say, not for human consumption.
Knowing what chemical compounds are inside these legal highs is what Stephen Bell has done at Queen's University in Belfast. He and his team of chemists have created a new fast-track approach to identifying these psychoactive substances.
The method that we have developed essentially involves trying to identify chemical compounds by looking at the way that they vibrate. Basically, every different chemical compound vibrates in a slightly different way because it's got a different composition. So this is kind of like a chemical fingerprint, but it also lets us very rapidly find those ones which we haven't seen before, the new ones that are coming on the market and are potentially hazardous because we haven't seen them before. Calling these things legal highs is a terrible misnomer, and it's really very harmful. In the first place, because they're not legal, many of the compound substances that are seized are prohibited substances, and therefore they simply are not legal, and they've never been tested by anyone. We're simply doing a huge experiment here where we're feeding all these things to young people and hoping it doesn't do any harm.
But how to stop this so-called legal high experiment? The British government has approved a blanket ban on these psychoactive substances, expected to go into effect sometime in May. Anyone caught selling these substances can face up to 7 years in prison. It's being modeled after the Republic of Ireland's psychoactive substance law, which was introduced in 2010. But here in Dublin, this law has not been without controversy. Martin McHugh is a former addict who has used cannabis, heroin, cocaine, and ecstasy, but none of these prepared him for what came next.
I started using legal highs when they first became available in the shops in the city centre, and then when the shops were shut down, you were still able to get them. They were still readily available on the streets. They were coming from online or via the UK.
What were the effects of legal highs on you?
The symptoms I was getting personally was severe paranoia. You'd feel like your skin was crawling. You'd be on a high from 36 to 72 hours, and any suppressant wouldn't take you down off that high.
Why did you keep taking them?
Can't even describe why I would have took kept going back to take them because I know I'm an addict.
Tim Bingham has researched what effects the Psychoactive Substance Act has had on drug consumption in Ireland. He says while the ban has closed shops selling them, internet is still a buyer and seller's best friend.
So yeah, we've got K2 herbal insects legal highs. So here we can see it's being sold for $7.95. You've got different types. You've got the 1 gram, you've got 3 grams, you've got the 6 grams. We're going for 2 packets of that. I can check out now. You don't have to register or anything like that. You can just check out anonymously and it's sent to your home address next day. These products can be bought on the internet because the servers aren't actually based in Ireland. So as to where these servers are based or where these websites are actually based, it's not actually illegal to sell these products. We know that people do still buy these products because we know that from our last student drug survey, we found that 19% of students of this, the ones we actually surveyed, had actually purchased either by themselves or by a friend.
Cheap, legal and pretty packaging. Here in Monaghan, near the border with Northern Ireland, synthetic cannabis has become the #1 drug of choice among adolescents as young as 13. Packy Kelly works at a family centre in Monaghan, a town which received attention last year when 2 young people died from legal highs. He says the ban has done little to stop the flow of these drugs onto the market.
We've been collecting some of the drug wrappers that this substance comes in, and we have many types of it. In fact, this one, they would say, heroin users have told us that they would much prefer to use heroin on a regular basis rather than use this stuff. All of these substances have been seized in different arrests or searches by the police in Ireland, and to date no prosecutions have happened for possession. So currently the legislation that we have in Ireland is not currently fit for purpose.
When the blanket ban goes into effect, these UK head shops could be a thing of the past. But critics worry that the problem won't go away so easily. More than 100 new substances appear undetected every year in Europe.
I went to be tested for heroin in my clinic in order to get dispensed methadone. My tests were coming back positive for amphetamine and cocaine, and I wasn't taking either or them substances. I was just taking the legal high. But shortly after, it wasn't showing up anymore because it was stated that it was this new legal high that didn't show up in the blood or in the urine. So they were calling it the new E-drug. And people that have bad side effects from it and be admitted by ambulance to hospital, they couldn't administer anything for drug abuse because there was nothing showing up.
How can something be classed as legal that is so deadly and violent, toxic, that it's actually killing children and adults as well, because there's no class barriers there when people are using these drugs, But children especially are more vulnerable because, they're led into thinking they're safe because they are called legal, and it absolutely disgusts me.